So I see we're almost up to 340 individuals coming in. So I'm going to wait just a few more minutes and let everybody come in so that we can start and everybody can have the same amount of information. Okay, it looks like we're slowing down. We are also streaming this live on YouTube. So we've hit our 500 limit. So we're moving into that, which tells me that many of you want to hear this information, and we are going to do our very best to provide that for you. For those of you that I've not had a chance to meet, my name is Mary Beth Cooper, and I'm the president of Springfield College. You received some communication earlier today from us about a shift in plans. And so we want to talk a little bit about that. I've got my great colleagues, Dr. Love and Dr. Coughlin, in to help us sort through all the information in the most systematic way so that it's clear and concise and you know what your plans are moving forward. We have been watching for the last 3 weeks, even longer, obviously, but for the last 3 weeks in particular, about the numbers of COVID positives in the Massachusetts area, and we're quite concerned. We're quite concerned about your safety, want to make sure that you return in a safe environment, and so we've made some changes. And the email that you received earlier talked a little bit about those details, and we are going to walk you through those. My apologies for reaching out to you on a Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock, but with the weekend coming and also it being a long weekend, we were afraid that if we reached out to you on Tuesday morning, that wouldn't give you enough time to sort through your own travel plans and make sure that you know exactly what you need to do moving forward. And so we also are going to have an opportunity for you to ask questions through the Q&A, and we will respond to them and we will stay with you until all your questions are answered. So at this point, I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Love. Patrick, if you could start talking a little bit about student life and the critical information about Movein, that would be helpful.
Thanks, Dr. Cooper. Thank you, everyone, for coming on. And obviously, to echo what the president said is, we'd have preferred to move forward with the plans that we had. But given our conversations over these last several weeks, it finally reached a point where we felt we needed to make a shift, and we felt that this was the minimum that we should do in order to enhance the possibility of bringing everyone back safely and getting this semester off to a good start. So some of what I'm going to do is repeat what was already in the message that went out. We are, from what we learned in the fall semester, the residence halls are our most densely populated part of campus. We've been able to de-densify our classrooms to a point where we don't have any evidence that there was any spread in a classroom setting. We've also made adjustments where we could to Cheney Dining Center. In the spring, students will only be able to eat in pairs, and each table will have plexiglass to separate those two people. So we are increasing our ability to provide even safer a dining experience. But it is the residence halls and the traditional underclass residence halls in particular that we're most concerned about. And that led us to the decision to bring back on time all of the residents of the apartment style housing units, townhouses, senior suites, living center. So all those students will just proceed as if they didn't get the message because everything, they will come at the same time that they've already scheduled. They will come with their negative test. One of the things that you should know about the negative test, we've had some questions because it's supposed to be within 72 hours. We've extended it from 72 hours to a week, knowing that there are some states where it's difficult to get the results back from a test. If you have any particular challenges, you can reach out to the health center and they will work with individual students and families. So you will come in, then get tested again, just as we did in the fall. And you will be asked to self-quarantine, basically be careful until you receive your negative test result. Once you have received your negative test result, you can move about campus a bit more freely, although we will not begin in-person dining until Monday, February 1st. There will be takeaway dining, so you will be able to come in, select your meals, package, and leave to eat back in your room or some other appropriate place on campus. The Wellness Center will be closed during check-in, but will be open for business come Monday the 25th. So that's in addition to those students who are returning. We did want to return some of our students, but a lower population density to our more traditional residence halls. So we identified particular groups of students. One set are the winter and spring athletes. Some of the reason for this includes the fact that for at least a portion of their day, they are in supervised activities. And then we are also, certainly international students are welcomed to return. They have already, if they have flights booked. Also domestic students who are flying in and have a ticket, we ask you to reach out to Residence Life, let them know that you have this, and you will be on the regular return list. What we have deemed essential student employees. These are students that we need to open and run our facilities. So we have students who work in the Wellness Center, in the Student Union, in the Learning Commons, perhaps a couple of other offices on campus. They will be contacted both by their supervisors, but all of the students on the regular return list, which will number about 900, will receive a specific email indicating that you are to return on time. That 900, while it represents about 60% of the on-campus population, represents between 40 and 45% of the undergraduate residence halls, since we're bringing back 100% of the apartment style housing. So that's and so those students will receive a message. Then there are the 600-ish other students who will be scheduled to return on Friday afternoon, the 5th through the 7th. These students, once we have confirmed our lists, so probably by afternoon on Tuesday, will receive an email and in that indicating that you are to return that week. And there will be a link in that email for you to sign up for your day and time of return. And it will be, it's 2.5 days. It's a smaller group of people. And the same thing, you will come to campus with your negative test. You will then go to the testing site, which is in a slightly different place. For those of you who went through it last year, it is, while the tents were in front of the health center, we are not using tents in the cold of the winter, but right behind the health center, and there'll be plenty of signs, there is an annex that has been converted to the testing center. So it's indoors, large facility, high ceilings, good ventilation. So we'll be able to manage the testing in there during the cold winter time. So you will go and get tested there and then check in. As far as academics and such, I'm going to turn that. So what's remote? When do we start? I'm going to turn that over to my colleague, Dr. Mary Ann Coughlin.
Thank you, Patrick, and good to join you all today. We are really excited to welcome you all back to Springfield College, and we're anxious to have you all back on campus as soon as we can safely repopulate the campus. So I just want to add that from the academic side as well. And thank you and appreciate your work with us. So with this decision to have students move in 2 phases, we are going to have our classes start on January 25th when they are scheduled to start. That was extremely important to many of our programs to keep our students on pace to complete their degrees, and on pace to be ready to do fieldworks, internships, practica, and all other kinds of coursework that happens over the summer. So we're going to start classes on January 25th. We're originally only going to be remote for 1 week. But because we won't be able to bring the second batch of students in for that additional week, we will be remote for 2 weeks. And we will be starting classes on February 5th. I'm just double checking my date. I'm sorry, February 8th, because the 5th is when you can start moving in. You'll start classes on February 8th with in-person and e-Engage Plus classes. The exception on the academic side are a few, and they are very few, limited academic majors and programs where it's vital for those students to return and begin to do their upper level division work in a on-campus environment. Students in those majors will receive an email from their department chair or academic program director later this afternoon if they haven't already gotten one already. So it's a limited number of upper division students in academic programs that can also be added or will make up the component of those 900 students, approximately 900 students that will be returning to campus. We are very hopeful, and we want to remain ever hopeful that we will be able to be fully engaged in in-person classes and campus activities on February 8th. So that's really the side from the academic side, unless I missed anything. Anything else to add, Dr. Cooper, Dr. Love?
Nope. I think let's open it up to questions, right? And so we see a lot of questions, and Dr. Martin is going to help me put them in order so that we can respond to your questions. One of the questions is, if you've been watching this for 3 weeks, why now? Why did you decide on Friday at 4 o'clock to make this decision? Well, the reality of it is we're watching Massachusetts, and we're watching what the governor says, what CDC says in terms of what is the safest way to bring students back. And so again, watching the numbers and the ticking up of numbers, both in the hospitals and also in terms of positive cases, we're concerned about bringing our students back to an environment that is safe. And so this is the earliest we could get that information to you, and my apologies as we move forward. Again, we're doing the very best we can under really unprecedented times. And so my apologies that it feels like it's coming late to you. But again, what is of utmost importance to us is our students and faculty and staff safety. So with the density of workplaces, and we're working with that as well on the administration side to ensure that our staff also are safe during this period of time. There are a couple questions. One question, and again, I'll turn it over to Kathy to help us aggregate and get the questions in order, but was about rebates. So Patrick, can you talk a little bit about rebates for those students that will not be joining us until the weekend of February 6th, 7th, and 5th, 6th, and 7th?
Yes, my understanding is that the bills are only going out right now for the spring semester. So they will not reflect this change, just given the timing of things and when we made this decision. For the students who are designated to return later, they will receive a prorated refund of room and board as calculated as we did with refunds that we've done previously. So they will not be charged for that. The difference will be there will be an additional factor of slight adjustment due to levels of non-merit-based financial aid, but it's basically a 2-week refund.
Thanks, Patrick. We have some questions again about testing. And could you repeat again whether every student needs to come with a negative test to campus?
Yes, every student needs to come with a negative test to campus. This is different from the fall when there were certain safe states and people didn't have, if you lived there, you didn't have to come with a negative test. Given the degree of spread, given that there are, quite frankly, no longer any safe states, everyone, even if you live 15 miles away from campus in Massachusetts, needs to return with a negative test, and then we will test you again on the way in. Now, I do want to, if you've tested positive within the previous 90 days, then what you need to bring with you is the documentation of when the slip that indicates that you had tested positive. Because if you have tested positive and have cleared, then you are not tested until you begin to start getting tested again after the 90-day mark.
Follow-up question on testing. If students are tested before they come in, once again, when they arrive, why does it matter when they move in if all of the precautions are the same?
Well, part of it is because we are actually not a I mean, it is an attempt to get people onto campus safe and to ensure. I'm struggling to sort of put all the answers together.
Patrick, can I help a little bit?
Yeah.
I think one of the key things that we learned is that the density in our traditional residence halls accelerates the spread of the virus at a time when the virus is so omnipresent around all of us. So what this does for us is it allows us to slowly repopulate the campus so that we don't have as high a density is when we immediately move on campus, and allow us to stage in and bring back the population in a staged manner. Would you agree with that, or would you want to add anything to that, Patrick?
I mean, it's that, but it's also while the filter, the negative test and a negative test is a very tight net. It doesn't guarantee that we won't have somebody who has already been exposed ends up showing up and we have a positive in the residence halls. If that's the case, it's easier and more effective to get that person into isolation and do the contact tracing, probably impact fewer students, give us a better shot at clamping down on it.
So again, to your point, I mean, we determined when we started looking at how we could repopulate the campus, the living center, the townhouses, the senior suites were areas that had bathroom facilities and small pods. They were the safest place for us to bring students back. And so some of our freshman residence halls where they have a large shared bathroom, where there was more density, we thought it would be prudent for us to bring those students back in a staged response in early February.
Yeah, and is it where we're balancing delaying things? We're trying to thread the needle, trying to make the smallest change to enhance the security enough that we could bring students back. And I also want to be clear, we should be careful when we say, and I'm guilty of it, of saying things like bring people back safely. We're trying to bring people back more safely. There is no absolute safety in this pandemic. So we know there's a risk. We're trying to mitigate that risk. We're trying to take all the steps that we can to bring students back, knowing that it's still a challenge. Justin, we're trying to apply the lessons that we learned last fall. One of the other things that I didn't mention is one of the reasons why we went to shelter in place when we did 3 weeks before the end of the semester was because we had run out of quarantine and isolation spaces. And so that we had to stop movement on the campus, basically. We have dramatically increased the number of quarantine and isolation spaces. Will we run out again? It all depends, but we're trying to apply those so that if we do get an infection on campus, we're able to manage it as best we can. I hope that was the answer. I do want to say one thing of going back to the negative test, and if you tested positive, when you arrive, your information will be taken and you'll be alerted. So if you, let's say you tested positive a month ago, which meant that you still have 60 more days before you'll be contacted the week ahead of that 90th day to let you know that you should now get into the testing protocol and you'll be part of the weekly mandatory testing. So we will be communicating with you to let you know when you're scheduled to go back into testing.
A lot of questions have come in, specific questions about students and student groups that are included in the group of students who will come back as planned. Can you talk a bit more about the student workers? Who are the essential student workers? How will they be notified so that they can plan when to come back?
They'll probably, while Mary Ann mentioned that the department chairs are going to send an email, we also anticipate that the supervisors will be reaching out to students to communicate with them that they're on the list to come back. But all of those students will also be receiving kind of the umbrella email. You are officially coming back on time versus the 2-week delay. So if a student works in the wellness center, Scott Woodman, who I believe is the coordinator of that, will have been reaching out and putting together the list and letting them know you've gotten this, but you're coming back on time. They will be added to the list and receive further communication from us confirming that they're coming back. So any one of those students, I will say, brand new students, we get a small number of brand new students in the spring semester, both first year students and transfers. Those students will be on the list to come on, quote, on time, so that the kind of orienting and socialization process and programming they can participate in.
Thank you. Some questions about the rationale for bringing back winter and spring student athletes when most if not all of our fall sports also have a spring season, and the rationale for bringing back student athletes at all when there isn't competition right now.
Okay, well, to some degree, there are multiple reasons. And one is we had to, given the shortness of time, we needed identifiable categories of students that we could quickly identify. And so, would it have been, we had thought about other categories, first year, second year students, that's a category, particular majors, that's a category. Could it be possible to those who have a a large number of in-person classes versus almost completely remote, even though they're on campus. So that's one, that this was a group that was easily identifiable, and we were looking for a number. We were looking to get to 900 on campus. So if it could have been just winter athletes, if it got us to that number, plus the other students involved. We decided to add winter and spring. And the obviously the fall athletes, yes, they have spring practices and such. They will, they'll return 2 weeks later. And as I mentioned, another rationale, we had discovered that during the fall, one of the things that we had done is when we would put activities on pause, we would pause athletic activities. And we found that that actually was counterproductive, because the athletes, when they are doing their work, they are in supervised pods. So they are definitely wearing masks. They are being managed by coach and other athletic personnel for several hours, many days of the week, whether it's whether they were practicing or in some form of training. When they weren't, athletes do what athletes do. They like to participate, whether in their sport or something, and they may do it unsupervised. So we actually found that it was better, even when we paused activities, we stopped pausing athletic activities, because that's actually safer to do. So these are students who, for a portion of the day, are in supervised activities outside of their residence halls. Outside is better than inside. That's why we have an ice rink now, although it is still currently a water rink until we have cold enough temperatures to have actual ice, which we anticipate by the time you get back. We are planning a whole host of activities to take place outside the residence halls, sporting tournaments and those kinds of things. So we're trying to work in multiple ways to engage you as a student population outside the residence halls, to embrace the moment that we're in essence, embracing the winter and knowing that that's the safe thing. So those are some of the reasons why we selected student athletes among those categories of students to return.
Thank you. Dr. Coughlin, question about grad classes. Are grad classes staying on the same schedule?
All classes are staying on the same schedule. So all classes will begin on January 25th and we'll start our academic semester. It's just that the first 2 weeks of all classes will be remote, with a minor exception of some of those academic, upper division academic classes that we are bringing back early. Once students clear testing protocols, they may begin the end of that first week or the February 1st week with on-campus lab-based instruction.
And there's a question about, what do you mean by upper level or upper division? Can you be a bit more specific about that?
Sure. Those are usually juniors. Most of the cohorts that are being identified are junior or senior level or graduate level. It's not first and second year students, because the majority of their classes can be spread and can be taught in the e-engaged environment.
Thank you. Question about students who are in the ROTC program with a partnership with Western New England. How will that happen, particularly when PT is starting on the 25th?
Patrick, it probably seems to me that we need to make sure that we get you that list of ROTC students.
Are they okay?
Because they are going to start activities over at Winu.
Okay.
So on the 25th.
All right, we will add them to the list.
For the students who are moving back in February, a couple of questions. Will they be required to quarantine for 2 weeks when they arrive?
No, they will come in with their negative test, and when they will be asked to, yeah, I want to say self-quarantine, but it's not. It's basically be careful. Try to stay out of other buildings. Obviously, they won't be going to in-person classes. Those classes don't start. Though in-person classes will begin that Monday, they can't go to in-person classes until they have a negative test result. So that's probably the people affect the people on Sunday. Chances are you won't get your negative test result back until late Monday. So it may mean staying remote for that any Monday classes.
And I'll add that we will, of course, inform the faculty, and the faculty have already been informed about these changes, so they're aware. So they will be aware that students are moving in on February 5th, and they will be aware that some students may not have their negative test result back on the 8th. And we'll communicate that.
And there's also by doing this, there's kind of an honor element to it as well. So for example, I'm a student who's coming back on Saturday, and I need to self-quarantine until I get my negative test results. That means you can't sit with a friend in Cheney. You need to go in, get your meals, and go back and eat in your room or some other appropriate space in essence, by yourself, in order to make sure that we're maintaining safety. We can't track, we can't stop someone from doing that. We are depending on students to take the actions needed to keep our community as safe as possible. And that's one way, is to follow those rules and not eat in the dining hall until you have that arrival negative test.
Thank you. Marianne, you've essentially answered this question already, but just so everyone hears it again, for students who are moving in on February 5th, will the faculty be accommodating with classes on that day?
Yes, we will make the faculty aware, and they already will be aware of the fact that students will be moving in on the February 5th date. So like Dr. Love just said, it really is, the faculty will be aware. They'll be asked to work with our students to allow them to make that up. By the same token, if you arrive and you're checked in and you have an afternoon class, then we hope that you would go to that afternoon class. So I think it's a matter of the students and the faculty trying to do the best that they can to accommodate this.
Go virtually to that.
Go virtually to that. Well, yeah, go virtually.
Right. There won't be, right. There won't be.
If they check in on the 5th, it will only be a virtual.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Does the option remain for students to study 100% online if they choose to?
Students have been able to build their schedules to be 100% online if that is what they want to do. Currently, their schedule is what it is in terms of that. There may be some ability to drop and add classes, but I would want you to really carefully consider that with your advisor in order to ensure that that's in your best interest. So our advising center staff will be glad to work with you if that's a decision that you wish to make.
A couple of more questions on testing. Do the testing requirements apply to commuter students and graduate students who live off campus?
Yes.
Yes.
So just as in the fall, you need to arrive with a negative test. And this is to answer a YouTube question. Again, to clarify, officially it's within 72 hours. We recognize that some people have challenges depending on where they're coming from. So it's 72 hours to within a week will be accepted. If you have any questions about that, you can, or concerns, reach out directly to the health center, health center at springfield.edu if you have a particular question. In the fall, what we did is we had residents all check in for a period of time. And then the next week, which was remote, as will be this year, commuters were expected. So now every student is mandated to be tested every week. So the residence hall students will move in, and immediately that next week, they will be going into testing along with the commuters. The commuters at that point will also be bringing, and during that first week, will be bringing their negative test with them.
Okay, thank you. Are faculty being tested?
Yeah, yes, we have made a modification to our testing protocol so that all faculty, as well as staff that are interacting on a regular basis with our students, will be tested on the same weekly basis. We know that was a question and a concern from students, and we wanted to address that issue. So yes, faculty and staff that are interacting regularly with students and teaching in your classrooms will be tested on a weekly basis.
Questions coming in about books and access to the bookstore. If students were planning on arriving on the 21st and getting their books before classes start, but now they're going to be home for an additional 2 weeks, what counsel would you provide in terms of getting class materials?
I think we're going to have to work with the bookstore on that one, Kathy, and make them aware of the situation in terms of that. And that's another thing that we can also make the faculty aware of.
Okay.
We can post that on the website
When we get
early next week in terms of what the response to that will be.
I just learned from a higher power, the director of the health center, that commuters do not need negative pre-arrival. They just need a negative test from us. So scratch what I said. Do not need a negative pre-arrival. You just need to come, for any commuters, you need to come that first week, the 25th, and get tested and start weekly testing.
A related question about testing and in-person classes. If there was no evidence in-person classes spread the virus, why can't we go to in-person classes?
Well, part of this, at least as we are bringing people back in a staggered fashion, in a staged fashion, we want to try to keep the learning environment to be a consistent one. So as a result of that, in that second week when students are still remote, we want to keep the classes remote so that all students are learning on the same platform. So that's the basic reason behind that.
Okay. Staying in that same vein, Marianne, can you expand on what e-engaged means?
Sure. The e-engaged classes are the classes that are completely remote classes where the students have standard class meeting times and work with our classes and take their classes over Zoom. E-engaged Plus is an additional format where the students will have some work that is done in the Zoom environment, but also some work that is done in the classroom environment. So that's the distinction of our two levels of teaching. And then, of course, we have a third level, which is students that are taking in-person labs and classes where they're required to be in person.
Marianne, while you're still in speaker view, could you talk a little bit about the academic support that will be available to students, particularly those with learning disabilities?
Yes, absolutely. The same academic support services that are available to you on campus will continue to be available to you while you are returning to campus. So the accessibility and disability and accessibility services area has been working with students already. They are in full mode preparing for students to come back. Tutoring and academic coaching will be up and available. Full library services will be available. And we are planning on trying to have the Learning Commons open all 4 floors beginning on February 1st. So we are trying to make sure that those vital academic support services are provided to you in this remote environment.
Can you talk a little bit more, Patrick, about the enforcement of student conduct policies and perhaps explain what those expectations are for students coming back, particularly as an example, the number of students that are allowed in a residence hall room at one time, what the guest policy and visitor policy might be? You're muted.
Okay, I owe everybody on the panel $20 as the first person who forgot to unmute. So, well, first of all, there's 7 pages of COVID-related guidelines in the Student Code of Conduct now that have been enhanced and clarified. I won't review them all here. We've made adjustments to and clarified what consequences there will be for not wearing a mask, where you need to wear a mask. It's much clearer in there now. Students should definitely read that. The number of students per room has not changed. In terms of what is a violation of the COVID-related occupancy limits. However, we have introduced a more staged set of consequences. The consequences that we had, immediate suspension for the rest of the semester, we have changed based on what we learned last semester. And to bring it, quite frankly, more in line with some of the other consequences for violating other of the COVID-related guidelines. I mean, basically, what it comes down to is it goes back to the student agreement that we asked students to read and confirm that they'd be willing to abide by, which means that we want to take personal responsibility for keeping the community as safe as possible. So that means basically wearing a mask virtually everywhere on campus, covering your nose and your mouth, and an appropriate face covering or mask. Doing the best job that we can to maintain social distance where we can, to not exceed the limits, the COVID-related occupancy limits in rooms. To wash your hands regularly. We're trying to have as many hand sanitizing stations around campus, but to basically do whatever we can to stop the spread of this virus or to mitigate it as best we can. We are living in an environment on a college campus where that's a challenge, and it's counter to the culture and the practices that we are so used to as as our Springfield College community. But it's what's going to help us get through a 15-week semester. You'll also find in the guidelines the guest policy. One change that was made late last semester is that commuters are not allowed in the residence halls. At a time we were allowing any Springfield College student in a residence hall. We have now decided that introduces too high a level of risk. So the only guests that students are allowed to have in their residence halls are other resident students. Can be from a different building, but other resident students. Parents aren't allowed in the residence halls. Outside friends, cousins are not allowed in the residence halls, and students will suffer consequences if indeed they are found to have illegal guests in the residence halls.
Okay.
But I absolutely, it is in your best interest and in the entire community's best interest to go to the Student Conduct Code. I believe it starts on page 40, and read through those. And it certainly, if you have specific questions about any of the things that are written there, feel free to reach out to my office. We've got folks who have worked very hard, and we will answer your question and make whatever adjustments and clarifications we need to make, because we don't want it to be a gotcha situation. We want you to know what's expected and want to help you follow them successfully. Sorry, Kathy, go ahead.
Another question about residence halls. If roommates are coming back at different times, so one roommate is coming back as planned, another roommate is not coming back until February, can they still live together?
Yes, yes. We recognized, one of the other reasons, for instance, for selecting student athletes or any of those other categories is because we know that they will be distributed throughout the other, I believe it's 6 residence halls. Will they be distributed evenly? No, there are going to be some sparsely populated floors. There'll be some clusters of folks. But overall, the density will be reduced in those buildings. And that was the sort of the, what we were interested in, is fewer people per building, knowing that we weren't going to be able to identify, we're just going to bring back one pair of each roommates. That would have been an onerous attempt to do something. And this is a bit more straightforward for us to manage.
Okay, thank you. Will the move-in times remain the same, or do students now have to select a new move-in time if they're planning on coming back next week?
Excellent question. If you're coming back next week, it is the same move-in time that you already have. It is those students who are delayed in returning, they will receive a communication indicating that they are delayed in their return, and there will be a link for you to, or there'll be information as to where you go, either a link or where you go to sign up for your day and time of move-in, so that we have that spread out, that kind of staged move-in over that weekend.
Switching topics now to the vaccine. Will Springfield College students be vaccinated?
You're muted.
That's an excellent question. We are working on, we're working with the state as well as some of our healthcare practitioners to determine whether or not we could be actually a vaccination site. We won't know that information for the next 2 weeks. We are hoping that we'll be able to provide that service to students, but there's a process that we have to apply for. We're identifying a site that we believe that we can use. We're partnering with Baypath and Elms and Wanu to determine whether or not we could do this together. The vaccinations are coming in slow, and so we don't know, again, the accessibility of those. We certainly are phase 1 employees, both our health center staff as well as our public safety, have been vaccinated. The process has started for them. We partnered with UMass to make that happen. Again, we don't have a lot of control over that, but we are trying to determine an appropriate place for that to happen in the months ahead.
Okay, thank you. More questions coming in about testing and access to non-symptom specific tests in home states. Patrick, could you talk again about the 72 hours and extending that to a week? And is a week 7 days? Is it 5 days? A little bit more specificity there would be great.
A week is 7 days. So again, we recognize that it's, the technicality is, the technical expectation is within 72 hours. However, again, it depends really. We know that there are states and areas, geographic areas of states where there can be some difficulty. So we have extended it out to within a week, 7 days. If there are specific issues that a particular student is coming up against, they should contact the health center directly, who can advise them and has access to information about possible other sites that may be available for testing.
And that testing site can cross state lines. It doesn't have to be a student who's a resident of Massachusetts has to be tested in Massachusetts.
My understanding, and I'll certainly be corrected if I'm wrong on this, is that no, they just need, and I believe it's the PCR test that you need. And I've been confirmed as correct by my higher order health center director.
And that's actually another question, PCR and not rapid test.
Correct.
Why is that?
I will wait. I will talk for a few seconds while my health center director, Kathleen, types out a text that will appear magically in the upper right-hand portion of the screen. Some
We can
rapid,
come back to it.
some rapid tests are PCR. But Kathleen, why the PCR versus the rapid non-PCR? Rapid antigen are less sensitive, so may not pick up the virus. So that's why the PCR is the expected test to be done.
A lot of questions are coming in with some concern about the increase in the positivity rate in the city of Springfield. Will students be kept in a bubble? Will they be allowed to leave campus to go to the grocery store or visit another college? How are you going to maintain the safety of students once they're here?
A couple of comments about that is, I'll go back to my previous comment. Ultimately, it's up to the student and to act in a safe way. I'm not concerned about the student who has a job at Target in Enfield driving down there, because they're pretty good about making sure everybody's masked and you're washing your hands regularly and social distancing and that sort of thing. So that kind of trip off campus to jobs, to internships, that is a less risky endeavor. Obviously, going to off-campus houses with a lot of people inside, most of whom are unmasked, or other campuses or other places of business, restaurants, bars, you are introducing risk to yourself and to the entire community. Because as anyone who was here last fall, the virus got on campus, and once it gets on campus, it's, we're testing, we're contact tracing, we're isolating, we're quarantining, but it got ahead of us, and we weren't, we had to shelter in place, and it basically disrupted the last 3 weeks of the semester. So we don't have a bubble. We're not a campus, but there's the one side. We're not a campus that has closed gates that we can sort of monitor people in and out. But the other thing is that we don't have a lot of retail. We have students who interact with the community, but it's generally in structured ways, through service projects, which, if anything is done in person, is done safely with social distancing and masks and all of those kinds of things. So we're not like other campuses that it's a short walk to go to any number of different things. So that doesn't make it a bubble, but it basically, we're trying to provide as much on-campus activities so that you stay on campus. We're going to have food trucks on every Saturday night. After the first 2 Sundays, we'll have 10 Sundays of Sunday services, service Sunday in the late afternoons, early evenings. This is something students ask. The student population at Springfield College is incredibly service oriented, and when that opportunity wasn't there, you missed it. And so we're going to add service Sundays. Like I said, we are utilizing, we're going to do spring and summer sports during the winter. We will have, and I give the president and the director of athletics so much credit because we have a brand new softball field that I believe the softball team may have been practicing on, but we're going to have a safe recreation tournament, a winter softball tournament on that brand new field. So we're going to do whatever we can to make life on campus as vibrant as possible in order to have you stay here. We're going to identify some spaces that groups of students, I know you hang out in the, you can't have a large group of students in one room, so you hang out in the hallways of Gulick and Reed and Massasoit. And so you could argue, well, we've got a lot of people here too. So we're going to identify some spaces that groups of students will be able to appropriately reserve and use, have a TV in it, like a large lounge space for a small group of students, so you can have some privacy with a smaller group of friends, appropriately masked and social distanced. We are going to have an opportunity to see first-run movies in Fuller. Now, that will only be a small number of students per movie showing, whatever the limit is that the state of Massachusetts allows us. But those students will be able to go there, and we'll have, the sort of movie kind of snack. So we are trying to do whatever we can to keep people on campus. You're going to want to stay on campus because at some point, President Cooper is going to drive the Zamboni on the ski and on the ice skating rink. So that is going to be a sight to behold. So I hope that answers the spirit of the question.
Well, I'll be doing curling and a little bit of volleyball on that. So it's coming close to the end of our time together. And let me assure you that we had over 500 people sign into this and probably another 100 that were on YouTube.
Yep.
Lots of questions came in. Dr. Martin did a great job fielding them and answered almost every one of them between Dr. Love and Dr. Coughlin. And so we knew it was important to get in front of you that oftentimes a print piece isn't enough. There is in the message that we sent you a very robust question and answer format, frequently asked questions. And we have, I think if you take some time to read through that document, many of your questions will be answered. This has been recorded. We will post it so you can listen to it. For those of you that jumped in late, I saw a number of people that said they came in late and they wanted to know some more information. And so if you can watch us again for another hour, go for it. But I think we've answered most of the questions, but we know that we haven't answered every question. And so over the weekend, there are a number of offices that will be open for you to answer your specific questions. Go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, I want to just clarify to that point specifically. These are offices that'll be accessible to you. And by that, I mean, there won't be people sitting in the offices, but they will be responding to emails, because you will see in the document their emails, and be checking periodically for voicemail, and will be getting back to you within 24 hours. So just recognizing it's a long weekend and asking people at the last moment to change plans, we have arranged to make sure. Some offices may have people in it, some may be, but your questions will be responded to within 24 hours.
Correct. Thank you, Patrick. So financial aid, the business office, residence life, student activities, and student affairs. And so we will be getting back to you in answers to your question. I recognize this is very difficult, and I wish we were in a different situation. I wish that everybody was coming back next weekend and that we could welcome you with open arms. The numbers are concerning. And if the numbers weren't what they were, and the governor wasn't saying what he's saying, and we're looking at density and looking at how many people could be in the workplace, we would make a different decision. Your safety is of utmost importance. Probably the most important thing that we've done is keep the academic schedule in place so that you will commence at the appropriate time. We will be talking more about what that might look like as we know more. Again, at the same time, the governor and the state regulations are keeping us confined to a small group of gathering, but we are talking about what that will look like. Our goal is to keep you on track. It is not ideal, but we're making the very best of it. And I guess, in closing, I want to say to you, I appreciate your interest, your questions, your commitment to a Springfield College experience. we are doing our very best to ensure that it is the best that we can offer you given the pandemic. And so in closing, I want to thank my colleagues, Dr. Coughlin, Dr. Love, Dr. Martin, for being available, and we will respond to you. And so I wish you good health, be safe, and we will see you back on campus soon. Can't wait to have you back on Alden Street. So we're going to close with that. Thanks
Thank you.
much.